Thanks for being here. Welcome to the Trippy Tribe. This video is solely for entertainment purposes. These are all alleged and are my opinions only. I accept any debates and points of view here. However, please refrain from being rude. Thank you. Hey everyone, so welcome to my channel. I didn't really know how I wanted to make this because I'm having some lighting issues with my computer and my webcam. So I hope you guys don't mind me just filming it like this and splotching it together. But I'll try to do the best that I can to make sure this editing is proper. And the first step to doing that is using my mic for this so you guys can hear me properly. So today we're going to be talking about JonBenèt Ramsey. And as you guys know, Netflix released a series a couple of weeks ago on her case. And this series has ruffled a few feathers, to say the least. Now, I've seen people talk about how, it's just been too long. It's been almost 30 years now since JonBenèt Ramsey was found dead on Christmas morning in her family's home down in the basement. And this Netflix series kind of shows you a 3D diagram of the home that was over 6,000 square feet and was about 3 stories because there was an upstairs, a downstairs, as well as a basement area. Now, looking at this house, a lot of people have made the observation that it's like a labyrinth of a home. There's rooms upon rooms, especially in the basement where JonBenèt Ramsey's body was found. Her body was found basically, it was in a basement, in the back, in a room that you had to go into in order to see the door to the room she was in. So it's in my opinion that the police that searched the home just did not know the extravagance of this home itself. Now, we also see in this series the energy that John Ramsey had. I'm an energy worker and I can read energy. And after going through not only this series on Netflix, but also numerous interviews that him and Patsy did, some things that he said that just don't make sense in my opinion. And it is my belief, after going through a lot of things, it is my belief that Patsy and John Ramsey, I don't think they did this to their daughter. And I also don't think her older brother, who at the time was 9 or 10, Burke Ramsey, had anything to do with this. The ransom letter that was written to John Ramsey, and that's always been the biggest thing. And also the dollar amount that was on there was the only thing that he corresponded with. The dollar amount was that's what he got as a Christmas bonus from his company. The other big thing, of course, is the pineapple and milk that was in a bowl on the table. There was also a glass with a tea bag in it as well. And it said that in JonBenèt's autopsy, they did find pineapple in her stomach. Now, this is unconfirmed because they said in the autopsy that it looked like it was a pineapple substance, but they're not 100% sure. The autopsy report never proved that to be right or wrong. The Ramseys claim that after they went to a Christmas party on Christmas Eve, they came home and JonBenèt fell asleep in the car, and John proceeded to take her up to her room where they both tucked her in. At least Patsy admits to tucking her in. Then John stated that Burke wanted to build a toy, and they proceeded to do that, and then they all went to bed. They are claiming that they went to bed around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Now, the speculations on what could have happened after that evening or even once they got home are everywhere, from child abuse to just the parents getting upset because of bedwetting to jealousy. There's so many different things. I have an idea and I have a theory as to what happened that night. So I do think somebody was in the home. I think that person that was in the home was not an intruder. I feel like John was doing things behind his wife's back, behind his family's back, to either one, make more money, monetary gain, or to keep his high position within his company. I think part of that has to do with sex trafficking. And I believe part of it has to do with people that may have been trying to control him. And this is really bad to say, but this really does give me Diddy situation vibes, blackmail vibes. Do I think that John Ramsey wanted it? No. Do I think he fell into it because he wanted the money? Yes, because he was extremely successful already and he didn't know where the future was going to go because this was a brand new company that he was working with. He had just moved it to Boulder, Colorado with his family from Atlanta, Georgia, and he just really was confused about everything. Not to mention, if you guys look up Lockheed Martin, there's a lot of weird that happened with that company. Really huge company. I don't know exactly what they did because I'm just not in that loop. However, I digress. He was a high ranking person in there. Now, I believe that somebody was in that home. Now, I don't think it was an intruder. I think that John was okay with this person being in the home. And I feel like even the children and Patsy knew who this person was. I believe that something happened where this person may have stayed the night or asked to stay the night because it was Christmas Eve and they said, okay, sure. And as they all went to bed, this person decided to wake up JonBenèt and probably change her because she was wearing underwear that was 2 times too big for her. Don't know if those were in the home. Nobody really knows about those. But he decided to change her because she probably had an accident in her bed, which again, this was never confirmed nor denied if there was ever any kind of accident that night. Brought her downstairs and gave her her favorite snack, which was pineapple with milk. In that snack, I believe there to be some kind of drug that's undetectable to maybe autopsies or even something that gets out of the system in a short period of time. We've seen it before with a lot of different things. And I believe JonBenèt was then incoherent. And this person took JonBenèt downstairs and tried to find a place where they can do the acts that they wanted to do to her. And they found it. Not only that, the bonus for them was that there was also an escape route because there was a window down there. So they were like, hey, you know, I think at some point when they woke up in the morning, I think that Patsy let John know of this and John was aware. And John just told her to call the cops. And I believe that when the cops were arriving, they discussed what their story would be. That's why they decided to invite additional friends over for moral support. Because remember, the Ramseys had just moved to Boulder, Colorado. They were originally from Atlanta, Georgia. They even stayed after this all happened. They went back to Atlanta because they didn't have a support system in Boulder, Colorado. But yet, they called all these friends over? That just doesn't sit right with me. And it's just really weird. Now, I do have another theory that goes along these lines of things, but in a different perspective. So the person before I see as being maybe a colleague of John Ramsey or even an acquaintance or an acquaintance of the family that they've met while being in Colorado. But there's also another weird thing to me. Burke was in the Boy Scouts, and the knots that were found on the got that was around JonBenèt Ramsey's neck were very, very much like a Boy Scout knot. Now, I'm not saying Burke himself, but think about it. We have group leaders. John Wayne Gacy was a group leader of the Boy Scouts. So was this assault intended maybe for even Burke?
The house that morning after we found JonBenèt and never went back in that home. We were staying with friends. Friends took us in, and a lot of our friends were there to support us.
Yeah.
And the police came several times, and we sat and talked to them. And when it started to not go so well, because we trusted the police, we think, my God, they're our saviors. This is in their hands, and we trust them. And I had gotten a call from one of the fellows I worked with. He said, I got a call from inside the system. Get the best defense attorney he can get his hands on because they think he killed his daughter. This is like the next day. And I was like, unbelievable. Back and, there's a little cancer here. Yeah, it was devastating because we thought it was behind us.
You lost your hair?
Yes. It's growing back. My eyebrows are growing back. It all comes out, but you know what? That's very little thing to worry about.
When it comes back, it's more resistant to treatment. And that's kind of where Patsy was then at that point. But eventually it just overwhelmed her. And it got to a point where one doctor recommended palliative care. Let's just make her life comfortable. And we weren't ready to do that. I wanted to keep fighting. She wanted to keep fighting. And then it got to a point where I was convinced it was hopeless. And I made the decision to stop, at the doctor's recommendation, to stop treatment, but I didn't tell Patsy. The cancer had migrated to her brain, so she was not her normal self. So she didn't know that we'd given up. And she would ask me, when's my next treatment? And I knew in my heart there was no next treatment. That was hard.
Now, I know that was a lot to take in, and I know it's a lot to think about. But these are two theories that I've never seen talked about within the true crime community. Recently, I did see a very short video about people finding it strange that Burke was in the Boy Scouts. However, this person alluded that Burke was a part of this. Now, the reasons I don't think Burke had anything to do with his sister's murder is because he seemed to already have his own issues. If you go through and you watch the interviews he did with police, even the interview with Dr. Phil, it is very apparent that he himself suffered trauma from JonBenèt's passing. I believe that during the time that this all took place, that Patsy and John Ramsey kept Burke extremely hidden from the public and extremely hidden from everything. And I truly believe that that traumatized him. Could you imagine your parents not telling you what's going on, what's happening, what happened to his sister? I don't know exactly when they told him, but it seems like throughout all of these events, even that happened on Christmas Day, he was very well sheltered and very well kept occupied during that time. And honestly, I think it's kind of selfish to say that Burke had anything to do with it, because at the end of the day, he was left with parents, his mother specifically, mourning the loss of a child and not being a full-on mom while going through cancer treatments, and also her just perseverance in doing all of that. But also, he kind of lost his dad along the way too, because he had then lost his second daughter. So a lot of people ask me, do I think Burke Ramsey had anything to do with it? And simply, I say no. I think as he got older, he started finding things out for himself. And I think that's part of the reason he agreed to do the Dr. Phil interview he did, was because he thought he can finally be a part of it. But he learned that he had traumas that he hadn't worked through. I mean, you hear of an incident that happened where he hit his sister with a golf club. This kid had some behavioral issues. You can clearly tell he had behavioral issues. But I really don't think he had it in him to murder his sister, take her downstairs, or even if she went downstairs on her own, do the horrendous things that were done to her. A lot of people always bring to the table if Patsy Ramsey could have killed her daughter due to just pure anger. And I don't believe that either. I believe that Patsy Ramsey really genuinely did love her daughter. Do I think she was living vicariously through her? Definitely. But do I think it was a malicious way of looking at her? No. I see a lot of people say that the whole bedwetting situation was frustrating, and it can be frustrating for people. I've dealt with it with my kids before. But I don't think it ever got to an extent of that. You have to remember, these people were not poor. They had no other worries other than taking care of themselves. And I believe for the most part, Patsy, if anything she did, was keep a secret for John. Now that brings me to John Ramsey. I'm not going to talk about the other people in this case because I think that the man that was taken in for admitting that he did that to JonBenèt Ramsey, I feel like he was just a psychopath. And I feel like he followed the case and he felt like he was in love with JonBenèt Ramsey. And I feel like a lot of what he had said was in the media at the time. There wasn't any one-offs saying something that the media did not know. He said everything the media had said. But let me go back to John here. Now, there's a couple of things that bothered me about John. He said in an interview there, I'm going to bring up a couple interviews he did because this man has gone on an interview spree over the years. Now, in one interview, he says that this is not about a dead little girl, pretty much. This is about the incompetence of the Boulder Police Department. Like, how can you say that when literally you said you're doing these shows to make people aware of your daughter's death so you can have justice? The second thing that bothered me, and people have been fighting with me about this, because it's just weird to me. So on the 3rd episode of the Netflix documentary, John Ramsey basically states that he basically stopped taking Patsy to her treatments for cancer. Now, Patsy had ovarian cancer for years. She went into remission, and in 2002, she got the cancer again. In 2002, she went to treatment for a whole year until 2003. John then made the decision for Patsy. Now, Patsy is fully coherent at this time, even though the doctors told her the cancer did spread. She's fully coherent and fully aware of the decision she is making. But John says, I just stopped taking her to her appointments. And he alludes to the fact that he stopped and she was pretty much brain dead, and that, you know, she died maybe a couple of days or a few weeks later. Makes you think that, right? Well, I did some digging and I did some research, and come to find out, Patsy lived an additional 3 years because she passed in 2006. The time leading up to her death, she was constantly asking about going to treatment. I don't know what John told her. It's just a little fishy to me. Now, the last thing that is fishy that I think John said was, as you guys may know, John is now remarried. He's 80 years old, he's remarried, and him and his wife, I don't know if this was recent, but him and his wife did an interview, and he agreed with his wife when he said that at this time, they see JonBenèt Ramsey as a granddaughter. And John Ramsey agreed with her during this interview. That's his daughter, not his granddaughter. She would be 35 or 36 years old if she was still alive. Now, I don't know, it just sounds really fishy to me, and I think that it's my opinion that John was very on edge while Patsy was alive. You can tell in interviews, you can tell the demeanor. Now, you have to remember, Patsy was very passionate when she was in front of the camera because Patsy was a journalist. Not only that, she used to be a beauty queen. So she was very confident when she spoke, and she spoke with a perseverance and a passion. So you can throw in things that she said too, but at the end of the day, she has stuff to back that up. She knew how to talk. She knew how to have passion. She knew what to say. But John, on the other hand, in my opinion, he was giving us clues the whole time. And if you guys think for a minute that he wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't that he didn't want to find the killer for his daughter, yes, he would. Because one, the money's there. He's admitted to not having money. He had to pay the foundation off, pretty much, that he had created for JonBenèt Ramsey because it just didn't work out. But also, remember, he's elderly. So he's playing on people's emotions because he knows it's going to get people talking. Again, his wife Patsy was a journalist. He knew how this shit worked. But the dots connect, and they're not going to be any closer to finding anyone. Now, everybody talks about the DNA. There's never been a hit on it. I don't know if it was fabricated. Maybe we should ask Boulder, Colorado Police Department. Or maybe John's working with them. You never know.